Hey, I'm James Thornock. Welcome to the Coder Kids podcast. Today we have a special guest, which I'm very excited in this current episode. Her name is Jenna Greenspoon, and she is coming to us from Kidas.net. So, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, I am really excited to have Jenna on the program, just because I think it's a really good fit. I think what you're interested in and what you're trying to do in basically children's gaming, I think some parents might have some usefulness there. So, why don't you introduce yourself and fill in any gaps that I may have missed?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my name's Jenna, and I work with a company called Kidas.net. That's Kidas. And what we do is we have a software that you download onto your child's computer. And it's a really, simple thing to download. And then it runs in the background of computers to monitor voice, screen time, and text communication while your kids are gaming. So, a lot of times parents are thinking that they should sort of go behind their child's back and download it, or they ask us all the time, should we tell our kids, that we're going to download this software on their computer? And really what our goal is to be able to open the lines of communication between parents and children, because the rise of cyberbullying is really quite extreme right now. And, bullying used to take place on the playground and at school and, when they were out with friends, but then when you came home, you sort of had that reprieve. Kids felt safe when they were at home, and now that's no longer the case. Kids can be bullied all day and all night with the amount of time that they spend online. So we really want to be able to open the lines of communication for parents and kids to be able to have the conversation about what's going on. So we use artificial intelligence to monitor different types of toxic gaming behavior that takes place in games. And then we send a report to parents. So parents would get an update each week about the information of something that of what's been happening, where they sort of fit on the screen of, are they, from green to red, how much have they been exposed to in a variety of different toxic gaming behaviors, and then we alert you of any privacy violations and anything that we feel you need to know about. So that's sort of just a brief overview.
Yeah, that's the elevator version. I like it. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. So you were saying um, it's not really your idea to keep this like a secret, right? You want to talk about it with the child. What's the logic behind that? Why would you want to present them with this information like, hey, this what's the logic
No,
there?
listen, it's a really good question. I think, for me, I'm a mom of four kids. So I have two kids and two stepkids, and I use this on my stepson's computer. And I think, to myself as a parent, if I was given this information without him knowing, then I wouldn't be able to have the conversation about something that he did that we don't agree with, or something that he's doing that he then needs to learn to change. And if he's not aware of it, then I can't have that conversation. So our goal is not to spy on children and see what they're doing. Our goal is to be able to help children who are being cyberbullied. It's a really hard conversation for a kid to, come out of their room one day after, they've just experienced 45 minutes of extreme trash talking or extreme cyberbullying, and go to their parents and say, hey, this happened to me. Um, and so they know that this is happening. They know that the information is sort of being listened to on their computer, to be able to pass the information along to parents, that it allows them to open the conversation with parents. It allows parents to then go to their children and say, hey, listen, you know, this is what's going on. How can we deal with it better? And so each week when you get your your email that shares all the information with you, if you got a green alert, say on sexual content, then it will say no further action is required. But if you got a red alert on privacy violation, then you'll also be given resources to use to, understand what has happened and determine how to talk to your child about it. So, for example, I got a notification once that said that my stepson shared his phone number in a public Discord chat. So, without him knowing, that we had this software, how would I then be able to go and have the conversation with him to say, like, hey, listen, let's talk about what privacy looks like online and why something like that could be really dangerous for you to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like if I were the child in this situation, the conversation would be it would be so focused on the surprise of like you knowing and feeling like either like I don't have privacy or like that like you don't trust me enough
Yeah.
to tell me what's going on. Then it's like then why should I listen to you after that point, right? So I feel like but if my dad came up to me and he said, hey, we're going to do this thing, it's just going to help us make sure that everything's good to go and that if you need any support, like we're here for you. And you know, that is what it is and no big deal, keep playing or whatever. Then
Absolutely.
the framing is totally different, right? Because then it's like, hey son, it looks like there's this, this thing, you shared a phone number. Um, and I was like, oh yeah, I did. And then, maybe it was for a good reason, maybe it wasn't. But then my dad could have that conversation with me in a similar way that you had with your stepson. So I do think, and we kind of practice this at our company, right? I mean, like if we just believe in like radical transparency, and so if any of our instructors, I think we have like 40 instructors right now, if they want to know like how much I make or like our internal practices or how we talk to customers or whatever, we're transparent about all of that because like we trust our instructors, right?
Right.
Um,
Yeah, for sure.
Now, rarely are they asking about like internal HR hiring practices because like it just doesn't apply. But if it
Mhm.
did, they could ask that question, right? And so
Right.
it's that I think it's like look, man, I'm a parent of a year and a half here, so like everything with a grain of salt. But I think you want to trust your kid, and you want to like
Absolutely.
work with them, like you're on the same team, and yeah. So that's the deep belief I have. I don't know exactly how that would come out into practice in your home, but that is
Yeah.
that.
I think, yeah, I think a lot of these conversations are so, so hard to have with your children. And like we're living in a digital age that, I mean, many of us grew up like when we were gaming and we were playing on Nintendo and,
Yeah,
playing on our Game Boy, like it wasn't a social thing. We weren't playing with other kids. It's very
yeah,
different now, right? So, especially during this pandemic, I mean, my kids are spending so much time online and they're spending so much time communicating with other people. And, we look at it and we say, we need to find a balance of how much time you're spending, but we also need to respect the fact that this is a time for you to be social while you're gaming. And so, like, boundaries need to be put in place. And as a parent, I know how difficult that is. This product really gives parents the ability to say, you get your time, but we also know that you're being safe. You are a part of it. This opens up the conversation. No one's pulling teeth to try and figure out, how to tell you something happened or how to ask for help or, what the best way is to open the lines of communication. Everything's sort of out there on the table. Now, with that said, there is no specific information shared with the exception of things that are related to privacy violations. So, like, it would never say, your child gave Sam, for example, his phone number and then list his phone number. Like the information, we don't share specific information like that. When we share, there's a red alert in trash talking. You're not going to get a list of things that your child said or your child heard. So there is a big difference between, kids feeling like their privacy is being completely violated and everything that they say is not safe and everything that they say and do is going to be heard by their parents. That's absolutely not the case. We really definitely, put a lot of like we respect children's privacy and we make sure that we don't cross those lines. It's really more of a, hey, here's a heads up that you should know that there was a lot of sexual content or your child was, connected with a like a sexual predator or someone asked your child to go offline to have a private conversation or to go into another chat to have a private conversation. It just gives parents that opportunity to say like, hey, who did you talk online with today and
yeah,
did you know that person? Or because Otherwise, it's next to impossible to know what's going on online.
Yeah, and actually, I had a question specifically about that, like the impossibility of constant monitoring, right? So my mom had what, 7 kids, right? I have 1 kid, she had 7. We were the kind of last generation to be raised mostly outside, but with a Game Boy, that kind of offline gaming that you were talking about.
Mhm.
And I know that a lot of moms in particular, but dads too, feel kind of this, I don't want to say everlasting guilt. I don't know if there's another word for it, but just kind of this perpetual feeling of guilt that's like associated
100%.
with like I can't watch my kid at all times, even though I'm like supposed to, like I'm technically supposed to. And so one of the things we talked about on so many episodes is just that like like screen time is a thing. It like helps us as parents in some aspect, and it's occasionally difficult to police every single game and to always be present, even though I think we truly want to be.
For sure.
I mean, perhaps certain parents don't want to play Minecraft for hours at a time, so there are some exceptions to that rule. But I think the overriding feeling that I have as a parent, that some people might share, is just that I wish I were a little bit better of a parent. I wish I had a little more time. Like I wish I could duplicate myself and like
Of course.
and especially, and I think that feeling multiplies with the number of children you have.
Oh,
Like
I was
I
like
basically raised
exactly.
half of my siblings, right? Because I was the oldest of
Okay.
7, and I learned a lot in that experience, and it's made raising Jacob a lot easier, to be honest. Diaper changes and the whole bit, but. Um, how does this like how does your software help with the just like feeling secure and like kind of remediation of guilt?
Yeah, like the parenting guilt. I can promise you that it gets worse as your kids get older. Absolutely.
Fantastic.
You know? And no, and like that's exactly what sort of it's all about. Like, yes, this does not replace you as a parent,
Sure.
you know, asking questions and getting involved and sort of, sitting inside the room sometimes when your kids are playing Minecraft or Roblox or whatever it is and listening to the conversation. But
Yeah.
like you say, it's just not possible to do that all the time as much as we as parents may want to. It's just not feasible to live our
Hmm.
own lives and manage all of our children and be present for every minute of every day. And so
And get
this,
sleep at night.
yeah, no, there's no such thing as sleep for parents. But like, it definitely allows you a little breathing room to be able to say, I know that I am setting my child up for success in a way that they, are following the boundaries that we've set in terms of how much screen time they can play and who they can play with online and what they can talk about and whatever. But you make those boundaries and then you've got us to be able to sort of sit there and monitor in a way to alert you when there are things that are going on that you do need to know about and that are not necessarily safe or are not necessarily appropriate. And then
Right.
in addition to alerting you about these different, trash talking or toxic behaviors, you'll also get at the bottom of your email, you get a breakdown of how much screen time your child has how much screen time, your child has spent during the week, and then it will give you a comparison to the week before. So we break it down by morning and afternoon so you can see, if your child's playing on their computer in their room, when are they shutting down the computer at night? I mean, my stepson goes to bed later than I do at this point, like so it gives you a good indication of how much screen time is being used. And then it allows you to sort of, reflect over the week as parents and, just as people in general. We're always reflecting on, what it is that we've done, the boundaries that we've set, how we can improve ourselves. And so, it's a lot of really useful information that you can use to, remove a little bit of the guilt, feel good about the screen time that your kids are engaged with, and that that your kids are safe online, and that if they aren't, you are being made aware of it so that together you can use the resources that we provide you with to be able to move forward and know that they're being digitally responsible.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. We talk about that too. I really think that, you know, not all screen time is bad, and it totally depends on the activity, and it depends on like what you're doing. In Minecraft, which is, the common example because it's the most popular game on the planet. I mean, you can do stuff that's like incredibly creative. Really like build one-to-one scaled replicas of Chicago. Like that's been done. Like there's like things that are incredibly creative and are just like playing with Legos, but you wouldn't like shame a kid for playing Legos. So
Right.
yeah, it's having these conversations. I think it brings parents into the loop and helps us all kind of like be on the same page. And I think
Yeah.
I feel like that's what you're trying to do. I'm not trying to put words
No,
into your
absolutely.
mouth, but one quick question uh, I had about the software specifically. Um, I have the bad habit of like leaving my computer on like 24/7 because I can. Does the software currently determine like whether they're like moving the mouse around and like pressing on like the keyboard and whatever, or is it just like if their computer is on? Like how does it measure the screen time?
That's a really good question, and I definitely don't want to give you the wrong answer.
Okay.
I'm definitely not involved in the deep technology aspect of all of that. You definitely would know, more about that being involved in coding than I would. That's for sure. I know for sure that we monitor sort of screen time and text and voice when they're
Okay.
engaged within
Okay.
and
That makes
so
sense.
yeah,
Because that's the
yeah,
primary thing you're monitoring anyway is the communication. So you'd
yeah,
be able to use
exactly.
that as a hard metric,
Yeah.
unless they're talking to themselves endlessly, which would be weird. But I assume you could tell what
Yeah.
applications are open and whatnot.
Right. Yeah.
Um, well, that is cool. A lot of people are afraid kind of artificial intelligence, and there like actually is several good reasons to be afraid of it. But I think not all applications are bad, and it can just be used as just a proper tool. And I think
Yeah.
that is a good use case. I did want to ask you about your kind of personal story. Obviously, you talked about experiences you've had using it. What was the impetus really that caused you to find out about it or to want to use it in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, my stepson, he's the oldest of four, and so he's obviously, the most engaged and started the earliest than the rest of them.
Mm.
And when, he was playing Roblox one day, he was playing with his friends, he was chatting with friends from school, and I always say that we're very lucky with him because he is very open with us and does, open the lines of communication to ask for help when it's needed. But he came out of his room one day after playing Roblox for a while, and he came out. He was really shooken up. He was really upset, and he didn't really know what to do. And he had been chatting with friends online, like I said, that he went to school with,
Mm.
and they tried to extort him. And they kept saying that, he had done something that he didn't do and that he had, hacked into their account and, all of this stuff that he, kept saying he was adamant that he didn't do. And they said, well, we're going to, you know, there's going to be a problem at school and this isn't just going to be online. And,
That's
and
wild.
kept saying, you have to pay us Robux in order to get us to stop. And like I said, thankfully he came to us, but it was really a very eye-opening experience that like as parents we're concerned that our our kids are going to come in contact with strangers and they're the only people that we need to be worried about, but here we were in our own home where he was communicating only with people that he knew, and that led him to you know be cyberbullied online. They were trying to extort him, and then he was going to have to go to school the next day and face these kids. And
Mm.
so it's not just people that we don't know online, and kids are, and people in general, are sometimes much more open to doing things they wouldn't necessarily do in real life, and so they may not do something like that to him in the hallway and bully him for his lunch money, but they had no problem doing it online. And so we sort of said at that point, like, we need to look for something so that we know that this doesn't happen again. And if it does, we're alerted and we're able to have a conversation about it and just, know what's going on online. Because if he hadn't told us, we wouldn't have known. And who
Yeah.
knows, sort of how long it could have gone on. Um, and so now, now that I know about it and that I, see what it does and that I see how it opens conversations and allows us to talk about what's going on online, I look at it and I say, okay, great. Well, now with my three younger ones, it's not really going to be a conversation. It absolutely was a conversation with him of, well, why don't you trust me? And do you not think I'm going to come to you if I'm going to say something? And do you not trust what I'm going to say online or what other people are doing? And I don't want you listening in on my conversations and all of the different things that you brought up also.
Yeah.
And on the website, we have a parent FAQ and we have a child FAQ that really answers all of those questions. What type of information are my parents going to find out? And do my parents not trust me? And, am I going to lose my screen time? Kids are always afraid that if they share information, then something's going to get taken away, even though they're coming to ask for help.
Sure.
And so for now, like with the younger ones, it's not even a conversation. It's like, you're going to get online, you want to play games. This is just how it is, right?
Yeah, that's
Everybody
yeah,
has a
exactly.
and it just becomes, and it doesn't become, it's not an issue. It's
Yeah.
I need to show that I'm digitally responsible. I need to know that my parents trust me, and vice versa. And so I really
Yeah.
believe that the longer you sort of get this on your child's computer as they're beginning to spend more time online, the better off you are. The better off
Yeah.
everyone is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to me, I feel like adults have the exact same reaction. I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but this just like came to mind. My wife works for a company called YNAB, which is You Need a Budget, and it's a very direct, on the nose name. But it relates because a lot of adults don't like budgeting their money because they
Mm,
feel like they can't do the fun stuff anymore,
right.
right? Like they feel, oh, it's gonna get taken away. It's like exactly what you're talking about. It's so funny. So I don't think it's exclusive to kids at all.
Right.
I have this
Exactly.
same, and I'm trying to get over it right now. But I have this having this same reaction to, um, doing a calendar and making sure everything's essentially budgeted for, but on a time scale, and which is the same kind of muscle that you're using when you're budgeting. And so I do think there's actually, in an opposite way that you might think, there's like this thing that's providing like real and accurate information about like where you're spending your dollars, which is YNAB, or like a calendar where you're actually spending your time. Um, and then this is like the kind of language that's like actually being said. And so like I guess if we, but the truth is, I at least in my experience was that like having a budget is really freeing. Like we have an emergency fund right now. We were able to make it through the coronavirus and not go out of business as a company. I mean, so and because we
Right.
budgeted. If we hadn't, maybe we still would have, but it would have been a lot worse. Um,
Mhm.
Same thing with time. I just get so much more out of the week knowing like, hey, I'm going to spend this time with, my wife. I'm going to go on a date at this time. That's it. Work's done. Um, and then, I'm going to do a podcast with you, Jenna. And, people typically know not to contact me during that time. So I just think, yeah, I don't think we should be afraid of more information because it helps us, like you said, have those conversations, which I think are really fundamental. I actually want to talk about how to have those conversations if you have the time for it.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so I think my dad was an incredible example of this kind of thing because he often let me, and like he was kind of radical, I guess, for his time. Because a lot of people believe this now, but I don't know, like when I was growing up in the 90s. But he would basically ask me like why I would do something. He would ask me my logic behind it, like what's my thought process. He'd ask me about like my wants and desires for the future, career stuff, of course. He's a dad. That's part of what he's thinking about. But also just like my, how school went. And like he would ask me like more specific questions. He'd ask me about specific teachers and assignments and stuff. Um, at least once a month we'd have like a formal sit down interview, which I know is so crazy. It's like very corporate America, but I really valued that time, and it was just expected. Like we have this conversation, and he asked me questions, and he made me, I think, I think the benefit of these conversations, if you're doing them properly, is that, your son or daughter will come away basically feeling like valued. I felt like my opinion was actually valuable at the end of those. And it was nice sometimes to have a talk like when there wasn't a subject that I had to
Mhm.
fix. Like, it's like you break the window, you have a conversation, like it's all about like the window. But if you're
Right.
just having a conversation on a weekly or a monthly basis, which that doesn't sound that frequent, but over years it makes a difference, then it's like, oh, we're having our weekly thing. Was there anything you want to let me know about? Like,
Right.
this is your time, all of our phones are away. We're just talking to each other. Is there anything in the world that you'd like to talk about? Okay, great. Well, what are your plans for next week? Okay, why? What are your thought process like? Who have you been hanging out with recently? Cool. And then you can share who you've been hanging out with if you do that kind of thing. I
Right.
mean, I guess I use my father as a good example, and it really helped me kind of determine my own boundaries eventually. Because like he didn't want to kind of trap me inside of rules that he had made exclusively, and then when I went off to college, he just like kind of went off the rails and did whatever. Like
Mhm.
by the time high school had ended, I didn't know what I wanted to do with life, but I knew how to make boundaries for myself, and I was able to like explore and experiment and figure out who I was, um, by not also damaging myself. So I don't know how to put that like in a better way, but I was able to just say like, hey, this is what I want. This is kind of what it takes to get there, and I just had the intellectual tools to be able to figure it out. Not necessarily because of myself, but because of what my dad had done and how patient
Right.
he was. So, are there any tips that you would say in having these conversations, which can be useful whether you get the software or not? But I think, um, what are what are some types of questions that are good or maybe bad for parents to ask?
Right. I mean, I think that, and I think starting off is a lot different than where you end up. And when you initially start those conversations, I think, we always talk about, creating an environment that children sort of feel safe in, that they feel is non-judgmental. And, from listening to what you're saying, it sounds like that's exactly the type of environment that your dad created for you. He wasn't coming to, ask you a question and then give you his sort of opinion or judgments on it. It was really just about, listening to what you had to say, questioning, giving you thought-provoking questions as you gave him those answers. And I think that's really what it's all about. I think it's not just about what you say, but it's also about where you say it. So, you grew up in a house with 7 kids, and my kids are growing up in a house with 4 kids. Like,
Yeah.
everyone is in a very different space and a different time, and they're all into very different things. And so you say that once a week doesn't seem like a lot, but at the same time, like, you turn around, like the summer's gone already. Like,
Oh yeah.
like you blink and it's just over. And so you need to definitely create specific times in your week or however often it is to make sure that you have those conversations. So that's for sure. Then creating an environment, like I said, that's not judgmental, that is going to be at a time where it's just them. Even if they have a sister that, 2 girls that are super close or 2 boys that are super close, it should just be about them. It should be just one-on-one time, or, 2 parents on one time, whatever it is, but without the other kids around, because kids have a hard time just listening to a sibling and not jumping in there and sharing, something else about that. And then
Yeah.
I think really, pushing that non-judgmental piece. So to be able to say, even if it's something like this, that, say you don't have the software and a parent calls you or a teacher calls you to tell you that something had happened, or, you see something that happens when 2 kids are at the house together, instead of sort of jumping in there and saying, well, I saw this happen and why did you do it and what were you thinking, or that wasn't right. It's more like, hey, so is there anything you want to talk about today? And if it doesn't come up, just say like, oh, I noticed so you and so were doing this, so like what was happening there? It looked like something was going on. And then having that conversation of, okay, well, this happened and that happened, and then they may share something that you said, and just like you said, well, why did you say that, and what did you think, what were you trying
Yeah.
to say, and then also like asking them like, what was the meaning behind that, And then I think taking situations, especially if you're talking about social situations or, any type of situation that involves conflict, to be able to look at your kid at any age and be able to say, okay, let's flip the switch a little bit and let's, like, it may sound silly, but let's spend a minute or two role playing. Like, let's swap that and let's see, if I said this to you, how it would, make you feel, or what you think you could do differently, or how you think you could have the conversation differently. And so, I just think, like, even my son, he's 9, and he gets off the bus every day and he's like, oh, I had the best time at camp. I was trading Pokemon cards with this boy. I was saying to him, that's so nice. What was his name? He says, oh, I don't know. And so, like, just having that conversation to be able to model for our kids. It's not even always just in those conversations, but to be able to model so that when they are in those situations, like you said, you got to university, you were able to, set boundaries and make good decisions. When we start with our kids young, sort of modeling to be able to say, hey, I'm so sorry. What was your name again? I just forgot. So it's not like, oh, I feel embarrassed to ask. I've been playing with him for 3 days and I don't know his name. I'm just not going to ask. To be able to model for our kids how to take the next step, how to continue that conversation, how to give an answer that's not necessarily, an answer that you want to give. Like, hey, do you like these, new pants that I got? You might not like them, but you don't want to go ahead and give a negative answer. So, like, let's talk about how we can give a different answer that doesn't make anybody feel bad, for example. Like, there's just so many
Hmm.
different ways, but that role play really gives kids an opportunity to think it through when they're not in the moment. So in a video game, when someone's trash talking
Yeah.
another kid and you're sitting there, it's really hard to know how to respond in that moment. But outside of the moment, to be able to have a conversation about what it looks like to be an upstander and how to stand up for other people without feeling like, you're being crushed in the process. It's all those, like, offline hours or that extra time that you can, really have those good knowledge worthy conversations with your kids.
Yeah, and actually that's a form of play, right? You said role
Yeah,
play. And I
absolutely.
I'm a big believer that we learn through play and we learn through work, and um, not just like reading and watching YouTube, but like we learn through doing. And yeah, it allows them to play like multiple roles and to be authentic in that. Not that anyone's going to LA and starting their acting career after these things, but like it actually can end up being fun when you get into the rhythm of it, and it really does help you empathize with people in
Yeah,
different situations, because then you
exactly.
realize like, ah, man, I don't know how different I really am from this person. Or maybe you realize like you are, but you have that realization and you can have a little bit more certainly empathy, because then you will have felt those types of feelings too.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, that's like that's super true.
No, and I think, like, when you get your Kidas report every week and say you have an orange in trash talking, but it says your child experienced trash talking versus your child was trash talking, there's a lot to gain from that conversation. So, like, you're not going to
Mhm.
look at it and say, oh, well, I mean, yes, on one hand, you're going to look at it and say, okay, well, I'm glad that my child wasn't using, that sort of talk in the game. But at the same time, there's a lot of sort of learning that can take place from the fact that your child is being exposed to it and then how to take the next steps in there, right?
Yeah,
And so all of our recommendations come from a place, they're written by professionals, and they come from a place of exactly this: how to sit down and have a non-judgmental conversation with your child about something that they heard or something that they said, and what they thought it meant and why they felt that they should say it, and how they thought that affected other people, versus, again, that really, like, top down heavy, like, you got an orange and you can't do that and forget it, you're not
yeah,
playing online for the next 15 hours or whatever it is.
yeah.
There's not so
I
much learning in that,
yeah,
right? The
yeah.
learning
So
is, do I uninstall so that I don't get in trouble? Like, that is not our goal.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I feel like um I'm a big defender of the word judgment, and I'm a super pro judgment. But I think it has this different connotation in Western culture of it being like the end all be all. And I think there are so many different types of judgment. I just want to ask you about the type of judgment you mean. I think what you're referring to is more almost like final judgment without any kind of input. Like
Right.
there's no jury, there's only a judge. And like you're
Exactly.
gonna come in and you're gonna get a sentence and you're gonna leave.
Yes.
Um,
Totally.
I and because every moment that you're awake, you're making judgments about the world. Like this drill on my desk is orange, and like these are all judgments that your brain is making in real time. I could be colorblind. Maybe the drill isn't truly orange, but that's a judgment that my brain makes, and then that can be sorted out through the scientific process. So I'm very pro judgment, and I'm also I'm pro like child like self judgment too, and I don't mean like being overly critical because that's not good either. Because I feel like just like with anything, there's like good and bad amounts of something. So a lot of us deal with a lot of self criticism, like this constant nagging. That's not really necessarily helpful either.
Right.
But I think like when assessing a situation properly, that whole process is a process of judging the facts as they happened, and but like inviting them to be a participant in that process is totally different than coming in with a gavel and like just
Yes.
smashing a
But
child's
for a lot
ego.
of
Yeah.
parents, like that feels like the natural thing to do. You did this. I'm not okay with it. It doesn't matter why.
Yeah.
This is the punishment. And it can feel natural to do that because you feel like you're caught so off guard by what happened and you want to make a statement by saying this is not acceptable in our
Hmm.
home. It cannot happen. But at the end of the day, what we really want to be focusing on is the learning behind it
Yeah.
and how and the like understanding exactly what happened, why it happened, where it came from, what they were thinking. Like so yes, I guess we want them to actually judge themselves in the situation
Yeah.
instead of us coming in with a, oh, this is like it's your fate has been decided. There is no and that is the end of it, right?
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
times parents for sure we need to like stop, take 3 deep breaths and think like which path am I going to go down right now.
Yeah, I think it also comes from a place of vulnerability. Like if you feel like attacked as a parent, like somebody said something to your child, it might make you feel like, oh man, mama bird is angry, like your mama
Yeah, for
bear, or
sure.
and that comes from a place of compassion ultimately.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, and it's hard and it's like emotional work and you have to dig down deep, but like realizing, okay, I'm mad because I care about my child. Okay, my child does care about themselves. uh, so you could say like, hey, I'm upset because I really care about you, and I don't think like this is very fair to you. Like, how do you feel like this?
Yeah.
You can. I think it's good to be like honest about your emotions, especially if it's coming out of a place of compassion. Um,
Absolutely. Acknowledging their feelings also goes so far, right? To be able to say, like, well, in that situation, you must have felt really frustrated and you must have been really hurt. And that probably caused you to lash out in a way that you don't feel 100% proud of. But that must have been a really tough situation for you, right?
yeah.
And letting them know, like, I see you, I see where you're coming from, I see what you're feeling, and I respect that and together let's have that conversation to figure out where we're going to go from here, right?
Yeah, yeah. What are some steps we can take so that and using the word we and almost sometimes and I learned this in sales. I was in sales for a while, and in a pretty tough environment. But I learned some kind of interesting kind of body language things. If you stand to the side of someone and you're like facing something together, then for some reason, I don't fully understand why, um, you kind of feel like on a team. If
Yeah,
you're
like we're
if you're
together.
like directly opposite someone, but it depends. Are you touching their shoulder? Are you looking in their eyes? Are you like looking down at them? Like I don't know. Maybe that's too much like going too
No,
much
but there's
into
a
it,
lot
but
like, there's a lot to be said. Like I used to teach kindergarten and you know, always anytime there was a situation or a conversation or something, like the number one was to get down to their level. So
yeah.
exactly, you're not looking down at your kids, you know? Like when I have serious conversations with my kids, like we're both sitting on the same level so that we can look each other in the eye, you know, and I'm always telling my kids, and I know it's not necessarily easy for them, especially when we're having, you know, harder conversations, but like my eyes are here. Like I want you to look into my
Mm,
eyes while we're having a conversation, because when you're looking at the floor and I'm looking at you, like it's very different. I'm not sure what's going on in your brain while you're looking at the floor, but when you're looking at me, like I know that you're mostly here in
yeah.
this conversation, right?
Well, I
So
I didn't know this would veer so far into the emotional intelligence category, but this has been a lot of fun. Like I really enjoyed this. So,
it has. It's been really great. Thank you for having me.
yeah, no, definitely. And, thanks for coming on, be willing to answer some, maybe unconventional questions, of course. Um, and some conventional ones. What does the software actually do, and how does it do it? And
Right.
we're always very curious. Our parents are interested in technology and their kids, and how the two interact. And I think it sounds like this is a decent tool to be able to check out. We're going to put everything in the show notes, so Jenna, whatever kind of links that you'd like, you could just send them to me, and
Yeah,
I'll put them in,
absolutely.
and then they can
Thank you.
either reach out to you, or sign up on the website or what have you.
Yeah, I
So
was gonna say, like, we are always open to, you know, conversation, questions. I mean, we've spoken to so many kids and so many parents about, you know, those types of questions that kids would have and questions that parents have. And so we're always open to have a conversation. And we have a 30-day no questions asked money back guarantee. And I always say sort of the best way to truly understand, you know, what you're getting is to give it a try and see, you know, sort of what you didn't know
it's also
was
not
going.
that expensive. I looked at the website. It's
Yeah,
not. It's
no,
really not. For the information that you're actually getting, I feel like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
decent. My
yeah. You
son
can
doesn't know English yet, so we're not signing up just yet.
exactly.
But
Yeah,
be like
yeah,
red baby language, like nothing. It
right.
wouldn't have anything else on the report. Well, again, thank you so
Yeah.
much. If
Thank you.
anybody has any questions, you could definitely reach out to her. And of course at Coder Kids, we're trying to implement these practices as well. Whenever we are running a Minecraft server, we have moderators, and we have bots that delete swear words and things like that. So we're definitely concerned about this as well, and we're trying to teach those principles of digital citizenship. How do you represent yourself online? How do
Yep.
you work on a team? How do you communicate clearly with clear and clean communication?
Yeah.
These are built into like our Fortnite camps and our Roblox camps and our Minecraft camps, and but it takes time, it takes practice, and it takes play.
Just
So
like anything else, right?
yeah,
Just
well,
like
thank
anything
you
else.
so much.
Yeah.
It was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see ya.
Bye.